Hi, my name is Lisa Brody, and everybody watches accesstv.org. Peace.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Do it like this. Ba-boom. Ba-boom. Do it like that. Yeah. Ba-boom.
Small coming from you, accesstv.org studios. Today is August the 24th, and this is the end of the week, and I had a very good week doing this particular program. Hope everybody is enjoying themselves. Kind of want to address a few issues on a national level. Right now, I guess a breaking news broke about an hour or maybe 2 hours, actually maybe 3 hours ago, that a person in New York City near the Empire State Building, I guess a disgruntled employee, basically shot 10 people. One innocent bystander, from what I believe, was killed. The gunman was also killed. And it might be the sign of the times that we're still in today, that even though, we try to do a lot to provide safety for our citizens throughout this country, every time to time you can have these type of incidents that can still take place. And it kind of is more of an international scene, and we're talking about New York City, the largest city in America, the Empire State Building, such a prominent figure, facility. It's definitely going to draw worldwide attention, and not, 10 or 11 years ago when the Twin Towers, was exploded by two airplanes being driven in. New York is going to always draw a tremendous amount of attention. So everybody got to always be on their P's and Q's about what's going on, just doing general duties, coming and going back and forth. Your employee can be vulnerable at any particular time throughout our country for so many different reasons. You really can't even pinpoint just one. But I'm pretty sure that's going to be drawing a tremendous amount of coverage over the next couple of days, definitely going into the weekend. It kind of gets a little bit into a conversation that I've been trying to address about jobs and opportunities, and even yesterday having a long discussion about the need of doing whatever you have to do to find work. And basically, it's always been driven to me and other people throughout our society, if you pay attention, that with so many people unemployed, that there's always been this misconception or conception that you could always go to McDonald's, you could always go to UPS, regardless of the circumstances, whether you have no job opportunities, you really have nothing growing. If you have the basic work ability, you could always find some type of jobs. And when people say McDonald's and UPS, obviously those are not the only jobs that they're talking about. But those jobs always seem to be drawing a lot of solutions that if you can't find any particular work, something on that level, it could be Burger King, Wendy's, any fast food restaurant, any particular warehouse job, delivery job. You have a lot of menial labor jobs that still exist out there. Even those might be getting more competitive. Even some of those jobs you do have to apply online. But sometimes you got to ask yourself, do people really want work or do they want money? I mean, if you can get the same amount of money without having to do the work, a lot of people is going to take that option. And of course, when you got the Department of Social Service that exists out here, that is something that people can always get some services if you meet the basic criteria, which is pretty easy to meet. Many people feel like that was one of our biggest problems that we had in society when you established the so-called social service. I'm trying to keep it real politically correct. The terminology can go to welfare, food stamps, many different definitions, but everybody should know it comes from the Department of Social Services that covers those areas. And people do need the basics, necessities to function, a shelter, food, clothes on your back, some form of disposable money. But when you're trying to tell people what is the best option for them, and many people who would make these suggestions obviously should be saying that they would do the same type of work if given the opportunity as well, or given the circumstances. Again, when you're talking about drugs and the underground economy, drugs is one major, largest, probably the largest economic sector of the underground economy, but you got other factors: illegal gambling, pornography, prostitution. It is hard to compete when you're telling people just those type of jobs. Obviously, there's a lot of risk that comes along with doing the underground economy, but the profit margin, what you can get right then and there, becomes instantly available. I mean, basically, you're talking about a job at McDonald's or UPS. You're talking about, after taxes, a part-time job, probably 200, maybe 250 in tops. You know, in that price, in that ballpark price range. When you're talking about drugs, you can turn $20 worth of drugs into $200 if you really know the ins and outs. And gambling is almost the same form. People want that $250, but do they want to get up every single day, go to McDonald's, go to UPS, do the warehouse back-breaking job, put up with the aggravation of your bosses, deal with the circumstances that you don't feel like you got much to show for it? I think those type of jobs are always going to exist in our society, and I think the underground economy is going to always exist in our society. Can we replace those type of service-based jobs in our country when we're losing a lot of manufacturing jobs? I mean, when you have a situation where you used to have 2,000 manufacturing jobs in a particular area, and you shut down that plant and that operation, and then all of a sudden you put up 200 service sector jobs. Even when you're telling people about McDonald's and UPS, for the amount of unemployed people that exist out here, it's not enough of those jobs to really meet the basic needs. I mean, a lot of people are even competing for those type of jobs, McDonald's, UPS, warehouse jobs. So even that alone is not the real solution. You have to find a way to create more economic development that's going to expand the economy. And yeah, the argument will be, until that happens, you do whatever you have to do. Well, some people choose not to do anything. Some people choose to take whatever the social services exist. Some people choose to go into the underground economy that exists. So, I mean, you're going to have those circumstances or those options. Those are probably not the best choices that people really want to always choose to. But if those are your only options that's left for a certain segment of your population, and there's things you're going to have to put up with in all of those type of factors, the aggravation, things that you don't like, things that you have to deal with, but you just obviously weigh the pros and cons. So when you're talking about really solving a problem, giving people just options, and I mean, there's going to be some examples that you can tell people that a person started at this particular job and dealt with the circumstances and made something of himself. Check the numbers, though. They don't add up, I believe, to a high percentage of people. I mean, you don't have many people in the thousands that started off at those jobs and, the owners of the companies or went to a higher level of careers, not at least long term. I'm not saying it hasn't happened. It has happened. But obviously, there's a lot of factors that has to play into the role. There's a lot of things you get about working. You get a sense of pride, a sense of satisfaction. You get a sense of being responsible, how to interact on the workforce, how to be punctual. So there's a lot of advantages always, not just about the paycheck and whatever little bit of money that you're going to get, comparable to the other factors that you get out of working. So sometimes that has to be looked into the argument as well. Obviously, if you don't have a safe community, what is the sense of, again, telling people about jobs? I'm not going to use so much the incident that took place today in New York City at the Empire State Building, but I'm talking about on a larger scale where you have a high drug-infested, drug-dependent economy. You got a substandard you have a substandard structure that exists, that what you got to go through in your neighborhoods, sometimes it doesn't even add up to just saying that you have a job. I mean, if you have a lot of people that are at the bottom end, their neighborhoods are not really developed, they're not really progressive, they're not in the sense that they could become owners. I think in some areas throughout the world, you have better examples. I mean, you can give some people in some parts of the Caribbean that I am aware of a better start. 15, 20,000 basic US dollars, you can pretty much purchase a piece of land, a piece of property. I know St. Kitts and Nevis is one of the few Caribbean islands that has been made available. There's other Caribbean islands. And basically the people that have 15 or 20,000 US dollars could get a better sense of owning the piece of land, owning their property, and feeling like they can be the ones that can be in control of what they have. And they have to deal with factors of having, limited job options as well. I think in United States, we have a little bit of a different structure that many times, $15,000 to $20,000 is not being utilized for people to start to own something that they can have a better sense of taking care of more than just, being a rental market or living any way that you need to live at. I think if more people own what they have, they would take more pride in what they have. They would take better care of it. They would look at life a lot differently than the way they look at life now. When you have many people bouncing around from one place to the next place, moving 6 and 7 times a year, you provide no real stability. You have a lot of carelessness because you're just not able to really stay focused at one particular area. So I think there's many different ways you can solve a problem, but you have to have really more options available to be able to solve these problems. What could $15,000 to $20,000 in U.S. currency do to get a better start for a large segment of your population, to own something, to move into the process of having something that you can say is in your name, that you can take to the next level? I mean, $15,000 to $20,000 might be a down payment towards a house. Obviously, you got to meet a lot of criteria that exist here today. But to rent something in a neglected neighborhood and work, struggling, and you've seen this pattern for generations after generations, and you don't really see an ownership of that community where people can advance a lot more differently and have more resources to work with, I don't think is the real main solution towards the problem. Sometimes you got to look at things more on an individual level than a collective community level, and I think that's a definite starting point, but I think the big picture should always be about the community, should always be about the correlation of that, where you live at as a community has a sense of better interaction, has a sense of better progress than what you've had in the past. Many people can look at things a lot differently. I'm not saying you have to look at it just the way that I am presenting it to you, but I think when you make the argument about, well, take any job you get until something better comes along, or you have to crawl before you walk, you could say we've been crawling for a long time. You could say people are tired of crawling. You want to maybe start off walking before you can start to run. And I'm saying crawling to the point where, you have to take something and be in a situation, and then 5 and 10 years later, you're really not that much advanced than you were the previous 5. We're losing a lot of ground for many people in this country. People are even saying the middle class is not what it used to be. So I think you got to really examine this whole picture before you throw sound bites that, well, a job is better than no job. Yeah, money is better than no money. Having something is always better than not having something. What you have to go through, what you are willing to deal with, and where you see things moving beyond just where you're started at, is kind of where we want to challenge people to look at a lot more broader than just limited to one particular level of thinking. So I'm just giving you an idea. I'm going to kind of advance a little bit going into next week. Hopefully I could expand a few more different topics beyond the job market and talk about a different level of globalization. Again, I'm very sad to hear that somebody lost their life in a tragic killing in New York City. And hopefully, we can learn again from this bad incident. But there's a lot that you're going to have to go through, whether you work or you don't work. Whether you go into the underground economy or whether you don't go into the underground economy, you're still going to have things that you're going to have to deal with. It's how you're able to deal with what you're being thrown at you is the real solution. You know, can you deal with things that you don't like, that you don't want to deal with, that you want to see change? That's a tremendous challenge. So again, I enjoyed myself doing the small report this week. Again, I thank my executive producer here at accesstv.org Studios for doing a fine job putting this presentation online. And obviously, I'm going to enjoy the weekend. We have very nice weather here. Feel a little bit disappointed for the people down in South Florida that they may be having a hurricane, but you just have to deal with the circumstances, again, that you're dealing with. So again, this is Jonathan Small doing the Small Report, and until the next time that I see you, everybody have a very blessed and happy weekend. Thank you.
Do it like this. Ba-boom, ba-boom. Do it like that.